Hello and welcome to another episode of Veterans to Success, the podcast where I get to speak to seemingly ordinary people with extraordinary stories. And today I've got with me none other than John Reilly. Hello, John.
Hello, glad to be here.
Fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing phenomenal. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to join you in your audience.
No, and thank you for joining me. And you could probably tell that John's not from the UK, he's from across the pond, which is absolutely brilliant. Yeah. No, let's dive straight in because I've already explained that there's no fanfare for the common man or common woman, and there's no big introduction either.
Yeah.
What I'm more interested in is doing a reveal as we go along. So,
Okay.
and I've always found it more interesting if you see, because a lot of times people make such an introduction and give such a full introduction that you've said everything about the person, and I don't
That's
want to
right.
do that. I don't want to
Yeah.
do that because I want to find out about you and let you share your story. So let's go back to when you were a young boy. What were you
Yeah.
up to? What were you up to? It was a bit unusual.
Well, I'm a foreign service brat. My father was with the foreign service. We were U.S. diplomats. I lived overseas all my life. I was born in Liberia, West Africa. My sister was born in Saudi Arabia. We traveled extensively every 2-3 years. I've lived in China. As a matter of fact, I guess one little bit of claim to fame is my father was part of the first U.S. mission to communist China in 1973. When we first reestablished diplomatic relationships with the People's Republic of China in 1973. So we were there. As a matter of fact, George Bush, first George Bush, was our ambassador there. So we were family friends with them. So I remember attending, I was 8 to 10 years old. I remember attending parties and Kissinger was there and Cho and Lai, all these big names you've read about in the history books. I was there. I saw them.
Wow.
So anyway, I grew up around the world. Yeah.
And how did that influence you, right? Because I mean, Henry Kissinger, right?
Yeah.
George Bush, #1, the senior,
Yeah.
and all those guys. I mean, flipping heck, I can only just imagine. Well, I suppose as an 8-year-old, you weren't really aware of
Right.
It.
Just another adult in my life timeline. Actually, I was very, very fortunate in my upbringing and all that. I'm very well aware as I got older that my peers, other kids my age, seemed to struggle immensely with moving every 2-3 years, making new friends. I found life to be an adventure. And this one common theme plays out over and over in my head. Your mindset. You will either succeed in life because of your mindset or it will take you down. And I saw life at that time as an adventure. And I love air travel. I just love traveling. And as a matter of fact, that's probably how my love for flying was sparked in just all the traveling that we did as a kid.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later because we've got some interesting things to chat about, haven't we?
Yes.
So the mindset, you were an adventurer from a young boy, really, weren't you? And
Yeah.
how was your sister? Because your sister was born in Saudi Arabia, so a different country. How did she get on? The same sort of adventurous
Yes.
behavior?
Yes. My sister and I are very, very close. I actually have a brother also. We're very, very close-knit family. I think that also helped us deal with the ups and downs and stress of travel. We had each other. And it just emphasizes the point, and it reminds you how critical family is. It played an immense supportive role, having a good support base and family. And that mutual sense of adventure and mutual experiences.
Yeah. Out of interest, where was your brother born?
I'm sorry, my brother?
Yeah. Which
My
country?
he was born in Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. My mother is Vietnamese, and my father is from Georgia. I'm a hybrid. I'm a mix.
hybrid. Yeah. And how did your mum and dad meet?
My dad was with the U.S. Embassy in Saigon, South Vietnam, and
Right.
he met her at a family restaurant, and she was working there.
Wow, what a story. And how did
Yeah.
that get on? That's interesting because I know back in the, what was it, 70s or 60s, like Vietnam was, I mean, I think it would be true to say that the Americans weren't on the top of the Christmas card list for the Vietnamese.
No, no, not with the North Vietnamese. The South Vietnamese obviously desperately wanted us to stay, but the way the political and cultural environment, we had to pull out. Saigon fell April 30th, 1975, and I happened to be in Saigon, and we left April 8th. We were on our way out of China, because remember, I said we were part of the first U.S. mission
Yeah.
to communist China. We had moved there in 73. So we had stopped in Saigon in 1973 to visit family, went to China, and on our way out, on our way to our next duty station, which happened to be Africa, we stopped in Saigon again, only this time in the 3 years since I was, 2 years since I was there, from 73 to 75, an enormous amount of change had occurred. And we left April 8th, 1975, and I was 10 years old, and I still remember the sound of artillery and mortars. And a lot of us, and I don't remember how many of us, maybe several hundred, but I remember sitting there in the tarmac at the terminal. And to this day, I remember that Pan Am 747 rolling up to pick us up. And that was probably the very first time in my young age I felt such an extraordinary amount of national pride, of just being an American. And that really began to set, it left an imprint about being an American and what this country is all about. Because of my travels around the country, around the world, I have seen countries that have not. And the way the world is going in this, and the way things are going in the United States right here, I shake my head sadly, because a vast majority of the people here don't really know what it's like in the outside world. And they
Yeah.
take what this country is all about for granted. And it's sad. And there's so much division and so on. But I truly believe that if a lot of these people had actually had actual experience or seen what I have seen in third world countries and so on, they would have just that much more appreciation for what we do have. I'm not saying we're perfect, but it's not as bad as some of these haters are trying to make it to be. No.
Yeah, and I guess you're as qualified as any, because I've done a fair bit of traveling. You've actually lived in a lot of different
Yeah.
countries, and
Yeah.
you've witnessed the difference in culture. And at the end of the day, I mean, there's a lot going on in the world now. And you know what? Excuse me. I look back at any decade, and you can always make that statement. There's a lot
Yeah.
going on in the world, and
Yeah.
and and I think, and let me know if you share my opinion on this. I think there are many, many more good people in the world than there are bad. It's just that the bad ones move around a lot and they get all the press.
That's correct. Yes, sir. I absolutely agree with you there. There's a lot of good people out there doing the best they can. It's just that the bad folks, they get the notoriety because of social media and because they get the press. Exactly right.
I mean, because there's something going around at the minute, isn't there, with the troubles you've got going on in the States with fires and that, and there are people putting fake news out saying that something's happening, and that the National Guard are doing something and they're going to block everything, and then it's causing panic, and actually it's not true, and it's making it really
That's correct.
difficult for the rescue forces, the rescue crews to go in. I mean, you got, and I'm not going to get on my high horse because this podcast
Yeah.
is about you.
That's right.
But I do wonder though sometimes what the purpose is of these numpties making fake news up and who it benefits.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like they just have the thrill of knowing that by putting out a bit of false news, fake news, a lie, they get the kick out of seeing the ripple effect of negativity and chaos and confusion. just a psychotic, weird. They're just quirky and they're wired differently. And it's unfortunate the immense disruption and destruction that they can create by the stuff that they put out there. A lot of times just in fun, or sometimes they just absolutely believe. They're just misguided, misinformed, and they absolutely believe their conspiracy theories. And it's just really horrible. It's just really horrible.
So coming back to when you're 8 and you're playing games with other children, and while your dad and your mum are in meetings or socializing with Henry Kissinger, President Bush, and all the other guys, what is it that's, because that would be back in the 70s, right? And so what was it that made you want to join the military? What made you think, wow,
I think it had a lot to do with my sense of national pride. I just, at some point in my early life, I began to realize that to serve your country or your community, there was literally no higher calling. My father had served in the military, and now he was serving the foreign, the government, the foreign service aspect. So I had that in my life. And because of the networking and the socializing that I had at that time, the people we were meeting, everyone had either spent time in the military and or had moved on and were now serving in the U.S. government by serving in the foreign service. So serving became a big part of my life. It was just something that you do in appreciation for this country. You give back what you can. 4 years, a career, and it had been my intention when I joined the Army to make it a career.
So what was going on in your life just before you joined the military, and then you thought, right, okay, I'm going?
So I joined the military in 1989. So throughout the 80s, just like you said, we could pick any decade and we can pick out things that were going on at that time. In the 80s, Ronald Reagan was bumping heads with Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. We had actual dogfights in the Gulf of Sidra outside Libya, outside Benghazi in the early 80s. We invaded Grenada. We had skirmishes and bombing runs in Lebanon. So we had all this stuff going on. Now, as I was growing up as a foreign service brat, I became very well aware of the reality of the PLO and terrorist attacks and stuff like that. So it became a part of the backdrop of my life too, especially because my dad was with the Foreign Service. And I was in Nairobi, Kenya, next door to when the Israelis did the Entebbe raid in July of 1976. Yeah. So I have been touched by some of these things. I've been close to them. As I graduated high school in 1984, and then as a young man, a little confused at that time, but knowing that at some point I wanted to join the Army, I didn't finally pull the trigger on that until 1989. So I've been out of high school for a few years before I got my head on straight and joined the Army in 1989. And so by the time 1989 came, the United States in December of 89, we invaded Panama. And to take down Noriega, the cartel boss and the strongman of Panama. So there's a lot of things going on that actually fueled my national pride. Just being part of it. And when I deployed to Desert Shield in 1990. I remember standing there. We'd arrived in the port of Adamam in 1st of September 1990, and I remember standing there. We were offloading the ships and just getting ready. I remember thinking to myself, once we got out into the desert and I was underneath the stars, I remember thinking to myself that for eons, armies have fought across these sands, and now here I was, part of this continuing drama in the Middle East and so on. And I just felt, I felt a part of history. And I knew that you all may not know my name, but I was there.
Yeah. And that, because I'd I did a tour in America near Seattle in the big American base there. I did a few tours of America, but that one was most significant. And then I got out in '88, and I thought as a reservist I was going to get called back in for Iraq. It turned out that it was the medics that were called back up and not the Royal Engineers, so I didn't go. But I remember watching it, and I guess somewhere I've still got videos of that. I mean, because it was just 24/7.
Yes, yes.
all the time. And
yes.
how did that affect? Because you've only been in what, a couple of years.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
then all of a sudden you're in the thick of it. So what was what
was going on in relationship to my mind?
Yeah. Because here's the thing, right? Because and you'll get this straight away. During our discussion, right? I know what regiment you're in, so I've got a pretty good idea, and we know each other. You know, I'm engineer, so you know what I do. You know, and I'm not per se interested in any skirmish or conflict in particular. I'm interested more in what's going on in your mind, how you're processing stuff, and if you want to share some of the challenges, that's great. But I'm more adept with some of the questions I'm going to come on to later. We'll actually pivot from what you're saying now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. When we first arrived, again, I was still seeing this as an adventure, and because I love history, I felt I recognized that I was part of a historical moment. So I like military history. I just like history. So I had excitement of recognizing that I was part of history, and of course I had the anxiety of just knowing that we could be going into harm's way. Between September and December of 1990, our posture was more defensive. The 82nd Airborne and all that had arrived first in country because the initial fear was that Saddam Hussein would continue his drive south into the oil fields in Saudi Arabia. And so we set up blocking positions with the 82nd Airborne, and my unit, the 24th Infantry Division, was the heavy armor element of the Rapid Deployment Force. And so we arrived in country to set up a secondary layer of defense behind the 82nd with our armored tanks and armored personnel carriers. I was mechanized infantry, so I was with the mechanized infantry unit. By December, once we were in place, I could definitely feel and sense a change in the mindset and our war games. From doing things in a defensive posture, I began to see and recognize that now we were doing things offensively. And I would stay up late at night. I always volunteered to do radio watch between 2 and 4 in the morning, because I could stand on top of my track and hold up my AM FM radio and listen to the BBC, and I would get my world news on the AM radio station. And so I developed a love for the BBC that exists still to this day. Listening to, just going on a sidetrack, I'm tired of listening to US news. I'll listen to the BBC because they're on the outside looking in and not necessarily emotionally connected with what's going on here. So I would stand on top of my track in the middle of the night, listen to the BBC. And so I knew by the end of December that peace talks had fallen through, and that I knew very soon the airstrikes would begin. And sure enough, in middle of January, the airstrikes began and Desert Storm began. And again, I felt a wave of a combination of excitement and also just the anxiety of knowing that, now we're just that much closer to actually having ground combat, depending on how the air war lasted and how what resulted out of that. In February, I think it was February 24th, the ground war actually began. And now the 24th Infantry Division, we were the heavy armor element way out in the desert on the left flank. The French Foreign Legion and the 82nd Airborne were farther left, and they provided screening on our left flank. Then we had the 24th Infantry Division, and on our right flank, as I recall, we had the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment, and then the coalition forces, which I could have sworn I remember a British armored element was in there. The 1st Armored Division was over there. And once the ground war began, they initiated the assault into Kuwait. And we were so successful and gained so much ground. Our launch, the 24th Infantry Division launch, crossing the line of departure, we were like 24 hours ahead of schedule. I mean, because they were so successful and we're listening on the radios. I think someone said, you know what are we waiting for? Let's just do this. So we mounted up and charged across the desert. Our job was to cut across the desert and create blocking positions on the main highway between Baghdad and Kuwait. So I think it was Highway 8. So once we reached that, and in between we had skirmishes, we took and overran several Iraqi airfields. We ran into some artillery units, some commando units, but it was such a what's the word I'm looking for? It was almost too easy because our weapons firing systems, we could shoot on the move because of the gyros in our tanks and in our guns. They had the old Soviet style. They had to come to a dead stop to try to aim their cannons, and as soon as they stopped, they were destroyed. They were so outmatched by us, and we just kept rolling. We passed surrendering Iraqi soldiers because we didn't want to stop our momentum, and we just pointed to the rear and told them to just keep walking. And then our mechanics and the follow-up supply trains, the cooks and all that would take these prisoners because we kept advancing. And as you know, 100 hours later, we set up blocking positions on Highway 8, and then we began to go down Highway 8 to converge on Kuwait. And we were actually warming up our engines, getting ready to assault the city of Basra when the ceasefire came down. And I have to tell you that when that came down, there was an emotional jolt of like hitting the brakes, because we had this momentum going, and all of a sudden, stop where you're at, ceasefire, stand down. And it's like, whoa, what are you talking about? We're warming up our engines. We're just getting this thing going. We felt the enemy had not been totally defeated. But the orders came down, ceasefire, stay in place. So we shut everything down and just set up a defensive perimeter. And not long after that, because of the Highway of Death, that battle happened not long after that. They were trying to bypass our blocking positions, and they engaged some of our scouts, and then they got lit up. And then that's how we have the Highway of Death, which the media got hold of, and yes, war is hell. And there's some really dramatic photos from the Highway of Death.
And I mean, I suppose that could be down to the advance being stopped and not actually getting to the enemy, was it? Do you think?
Yeah. This was an Iraqi Republican Guard unit that was trying to flee and make it home as intact as possible. Because by then the Kurds were beginning to try to uprise. They were doing their own uprising against Saddam Hussein, and the Iraqi army was trying to save as much assets as possible, which they ultimately used against the Kurds. It's very sad. So this Republican Guard unit was trying to make a run for it, but they got smoked.
Yeah,
to put it bluntly.
Yeah, well, the advance was amazingly fast, because I remember
very fast.
I mean, it was almost over before it started, and you've already touched on the fact of the psychological issues that presents as well, because you're just getting started, then you're told stop. And what did that do for morale, and for what sort of stuff was going on in your head with you guys?
Leading up to the ground war, I saw a variety of emotions. I saw some people get very, very despondent. I saw some people go through a wave of being accepting, okay, we're here, let's do this, to having bouts of depression. sadly, some of the guys who ended up getting what we call Dear John letters, where wives and girlfriends were breaking up with them, that was horrible. So a lot of people dealt with some stuff. I actually broke up with my fiance at the time, but that was by my own choosing. So I had a different mindset. But the stuff was out there. By the time the ground war became, everyone, like a good team, began to get into it, get pumped up. We were, let's do this, you know. And the idea was, you know what, I'm heading home, and that poor Iraqi guy is between me and home. I feel sorry for him because I'm going through it. And so we developed the attitude that we needed to, especially as infantry combat units. You need to develop and get into that mindset that you're going to win and that you're going to go home, and we're going to protect each other. When we suddenly came to a screeching halt, I do remember a lot of giddiness, a lot of happiness, and then all this pent-up energy just kind of had to be expelled. And there was a lot of horseplay and what we called grab assing, right? Just wrestling with each other and just being silly.
Because you got to channel the energy, haven't you?
You do. You absolutely do. It was the first time in 4 days that we had a chance to actually bathe and shave and things like that and get sleep. Like you said, it was so fast. I only had time for cat naps. We would advance and stop long enough for our supply trains to get within a certain amount of kilometers behind us, and then we were on the move again. And then we would slow down for fuel and then keep moving. And so we find there was a lot of good that we were able to catch up on, rest and stuff like that with the ceasefire. I came home advance party. Within 48 hours, I was on a plane heading home. I felt very disconnected. And this was the first time I understood what I had read about Vietnam veterans who would be in the bush in furious combat, and all of a sudden they would be in Japan or the Philippines on R&R. And you don't have time to process that. Now, even though I had 48 hours about 48 hours from the time of the ceasefire to John, your advance party going home, to being on a C-130, and that, by the way, let me talk about that moment. About 30 of us loaded up a C-130 to head home, advance party, and we flew out of one of the captured Iraqi airfields that we had taken. I remember that ramp coming down, and the 30 of us combat soldiers spilled out of that plane, our combat gear, dirty faces. We were wearing our chemical mop suits. You remember back in those days, we thought we were going to go into a chemical. So we were still wearing our chemical gear.
And they're warm. They're warm, aren't they?
Yes, they're very warm. So there's some there. And I remember spilling out of this plane, and I remember looking up and seeing all these rear echelon people. God bless them. There's a place for them in the military, but here we spilled out, and I see these rear people, crisp, clean uniforms, riding around in air-conditioned buses. And I remember turning around and seeing the rest of the guys coming off the ramp on the C-130, and remember feeling again an enormous amount of pride, of a job well done, representing the country, representing myself, representing the unit. So anyway, we go home, and I felt very, very disconnected, because in the months that I was in the desert, my sense of smell and hearing had become very finely tuned, because we don't have the noise and light pollution in civilized towns and cities. We were out in the desert. And all of a sudden, I remember coming back and just being overwhelmed with noise and smells, and honestly, I felt disconnected. It's the only way I can describe that. I felt disconnected, and it took me about 2 weeks. Now, the rest of my unit, it took them about 2 or 3 weeks because to decompress, and then finally they began the shuttle back home, back to Fort Stewart. By the time my guys started coming back in country, I had time to decompress and get acclimated back to everything. But I can remember feeling very disconnected at first. It seemed a little confusing.
Yeah, well, because it's interesting you say that, because I remember on occasions, especially because I didn't serve in Afghan, because I was out well before that. but Iraq too, Afghan, like the guys coming back, and then you go to Cyprus maybe for a week or so, decompression, and then they brought back into society, the UK, and then the first time they go out on the town as a group, what people don't realise is if they pick on them, they've just been in a fighting role for months, right? And and then if something happens where, and I'm not saying a fight is right by any means. What I'm pointing out, and maybe not all people realise, that if you've been in an environment under constant threat and conflict, and you come back and you want to go for a night out, and an enemy, like someone wants to start a fight, you're going all around defense, right? If there's a few of you, you're just watching each other's backs. And then when you go to the sterile environment of a court, right, where the judge is ruling that you've been a bit of a naughty boy or girl, what they don't realize is the reason that they were that naughty boy or girl is because that's what they were trained to do, to protect the country. Does that make sense? And I know
it does make sense. And actually, I am dealing with that in a way because my business, I work with church security. Here in the United States, we have people who volunteer to be church security and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The members who are former military, especially this last engagement that we had with Iraq and Afghanistan, a lot of them, unfortunately, have returned and don't understand and have not completely made the switch to understand that they're home, they're in the rear, you're not in theater, and that the rules of engagement back here are very different.
Yeah.
And they have a very heavy-handed manner of dealing with certain situations that I, as a police officer, recognize you're setting yourself up to get in more trouble if you don't tone it down. And so I find myself trying to encourage men and women, take a deep breath, slow down, and get acclimated. You're home now. You're home now.
Yeah. Which is interesting because you've just touched on your career that followed after serving with the infantry in the US Army. So what was it that made you decide, I'm done. I've had enough of this. I want to do something different.
I actually wanted to stay in the Army. I love working. I love being in the Army. I love being in uniform. I love serving my country. I love the opportunities it gave me. But I did not want to be infantry forever. I felt that after 7 years of infantry, I wanted to do something else, quote unquote, get a real job, go into the medical corps or just do something different. But I had become an NCO. I was a sergeant, promotable to sergeant E6, staff sergeant, and I basically had locked myself in. And I knew that if I stayed in, I would probably become that grumpy old man who just no one likes to be around and, unhappy with life. And I did not want to stay in a job just to stay in a job. I need to, because I recognized, because I saw it in other soldiers. I saw people very, very unhappy, but refusing to leave because they were more afraid of going out there and starting over again. And they would, and they would stay in the Army and be a total nuisance to everyone.
and maybe institutionalized.
Right. Yes. So I did not want to become that person. In 1996, I had applied for several different jobs. I was approved to go into counterintelligence. I was approved to go into EOD, bomb disposal. But
right? Okay.
Yeah. I was approved to go into that. I did all the testing, but the infantry branch would not release me to change my job. And I said, to heck with it. I'm going to go ahead and get out. And at that time, my brother was a police officer. And the show Cops, a show about police officers, a reality show called Cops, had just come out in the United States. And I had started watching that show. And I said to myself, you know what, that sounds interesting. No 2 days is the same. I'm not stuck in an office. I get to meet people. I'm a people person. And so I said, I'll put in an application and see what happens. I got the job in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the second largest city in the state of Michigan, and I stayed there for just about 20 years, 1996, retired in 2015. Yeah.
And how did it go being a police officer?
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. My entire career, I spent road patrol on the road, and I preferred working night shift. It's a different world. I loved some of the situations I got into where I could leave that situation, go home, and know that I made a difference in someone's life.
That's great.
Yeah.
And talking about, because one of the things that I want to cover is transferability of skills, right, that you learn in the military. So I suppose being able to tip up at a situation, like turn up at a situation, and you just touched on the fact that you made a difference and maybe saved someone's life. How did your skills just come into play from the military in those situations?
Well, interesting enough, one of the reasons I preferred and enjoyed working at night was because I was so comfortable with it, because everything we did in the infantry in the military was done at night. That's the time that we would initiate assaults and so on. So I was already familiar with working at night. So there was a comfort there. You learn attention to detail, and some of things like that transfer over into police work. You just need to have situational awareness and attention to detail. The people skills and all that is an individual thing that the military, depending on your job, doesn't necessarily teach you or put you in a position to practice. Me being in the infantry, I wasn't necessarily in an environment where I would interact with people. But working at night, attention to detail, the situational awareness, the mindset of serving, a lot of that to me transferred for, it may be different for other people's story. Of course, everyone has a different walk in life and so on. But I think those key elements, I think, were a big transferable element.
Now, thank you for that. So how do you deal with failure? Because what I've detected already is just, and it might, I guess it's fully influenced by the fact that from a young child with your sister and brother, that you were used to change, you were used to different cultures, you were already used to be improvise, adapt, and overcome, which are the three words that we use in the military. Because we always use them, IAD. And what was it that helped you transition from the military to the police, which I suppose is an extension of the military, but it wasn't that easy to start with, was it?
For me, yes, it was, mainly because once I made the decision to leave and I knew it was the right thing for me, I made the psychological disconnect from the military and I was ready to move into a new adventure. You are absolutely correct. Adapt, improvise, overcome. That was something I was already doing. And so when I heard my drill sergeants and all that first use that in the military, I was already comfortable with that attitude and that mindset. Adapt, improvise, overcome. So your question, you initially started off with saying, how do you deal with failure? That's how I dealt with failure. Expect to fail. You are a human being and you will fail. You are not going to be perfect. Expect to fail. And then when it does happen, either prepare for it. Obviously, you want to mitigate failure, but if it does happen, hopefully it's not as bad as it could have been had you not prepared for it, and then adapt, improvise, and overcome, and just keep moving, keep moving, keep moving.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, that's and when I see these people like, like NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, right? That's been around. The military was teaching that way before Bannon and Grinder brought it out. They just gave good communication, self-communication, a name, NLP. But I mean, it's a case of jump, how high, and having that self-belief, the wisdom, and I was always told I remember my mum saying to me, have the courage to change the things you can, the humility to accept the things you can't, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Difference,
And I've taken that with me all the time, and I guess you've probably done that as well, haven't you?
Yes, absolutely. That is a great saying. That prayer, that is absolutely, take it deep down inside. Have the courage to change the things that you can. The wisdom to know the difference. Absolutely critical. Yeah. Yep.
And on failure, right? Let's have a look at the opposite, the polar opposite of success, right? What's the secret behind your success?
I will tell you the first time, and it regards my flying, the first time I felt a sense of failure, as I developed a love for flying, I wanted to be a military aviator. When in my early 20s, I realized that I didn't have the grades. And at that time, I can look back now and admit I didn't have the maturity or I didn't have the focus at that time. I didn't have the maturity. I didn't have the focus. I didn't have the grades. And ultimately, I didn't have the eyesight. You can see I'm wearing glasses.
Yeah.
There was a period in my life when I felt extraordinarily lost. It didn't last too long, but it was a bad time. And I remember feeling sorry for myself. And I had got my pilot's license when I was in high school. And I remember just feeling sorry for myself and just praying about it. And I remember suddenly, literally hearing a voice saying, you know, John, at least you fly. At least you have a pilot's license. And it was like that realization that, okay, I may not make it as a military pilot, but I do have a pilot's license. And how many other teenagers can do that in high school? And that helped me adapt, improvise, and overcome. Began to reset my mindset. Began to look at the positive, and then move on from there. So that was like the first time that I can think of right now that I dealt with what I would consider a significant failure.
And I mean, talking about it, because I've got my pilot's license also.
Yes.
So
yes.
so that's something we've got in common as well. And I remember. I mean, the instructor said to me, right, that was a good landing, O'Connor. Right, just put the brakes on. I just need to go to the toilet. And he jumped out and he said, right, off you go. I thought,
That's good.
I'm going solo. And I was terrified, right? And as you know, takeoff is a lot easier than the landing. And there was there was a bit of a crosswind, and I'm going, oh, what do we do? Oh, and I'm coming on the final. Tell me about your first approach final when you were solo.
August 23rd, 1983. And I know that because I have my certificate on the wall that commemorates my first solo. It was in a Cessna 152. The instructor, John Sternagel, stepped out of the airplane, and he looked at me and he says, you know, I think you're ready. And he says, take it around 3 times. And he just closed the door. And I remember, you know, it's very different. You fly, as you know, you're flying and you're doing great. You have that instructor next to you. And it's such a psychological thing when he steps out. And now you know you're on your own with this 2,000-pound airplane, right? And again, excitement and some trepidation because, oh gosh, if I don't want to screw up now because he just literally signed off on me. And be honest with you, that first landing, it still sticks in my mind because when you're landing with a tricycle gear airplane, you always want to land on the main gear and then set the nose down gently, right?
Yeah.
That, I think, when I look back on it, that is the one and only time I was able to land on the main gear and roll with the nose gear up a little bit, like at the space shuttle, before gently lowering it. It was perfect.
Nice
perfect.
landing. Yeah.
I have never been able to do it like that again. Since then, every now and then, I can put my airplane down so smooth You don't feel the bump. You're just suddenly aware that the wheels are turning.
That's good.
That's very smooth. And like I said, it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens often enough where I can pat myself on the shoulder.
Yeah, or another one, as you're just coming in, I got it perfected, where just about 1 second before I touch the stall warning,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and then you know you've pretty much smashed it then, because
That's
but like, yeah, what hurting moments did you have, if any, on when you were flying?
Early on, you know, in those days in the 80s, I remember one that gave me quite an adrenaline dump. I suddenly realized I was lost.
Right.
I was on a cross-country flight, and this is up in northern Michigan, Washington, D.C. area, and I had gone to see some friends, and now I was on the way back. And, you know, in those days, all you had was a sectional map. And somehow I suddenly looked down and realized that what I was seeing outside did not match what was on my map. And there was a moment of, I literally had a vapor lock. And then I had to take a deep breath and call air traffic control and just confess, hey, I think I'm lost. And they asked me where I thought I was, and they asked me to dial in, you know, a special code right there.
Yeah.
And
on your transponder, yeah.
On the transponder, right? And
Right,
and they told me I was literally 30 miles off course. I was nowhere near where I thought I was, and somehow I had just blissfully flown into the unknown. That was a scary moment for me.
And that can happen if you just take your eye off the ball, can't it?
Yes, yes. And of course, now today with GPS and all that, you literally just follow the magenta line on the GPS.
Yeah.
And I have ForeFlight now, so I don't have the sectionals, but everything is digital right now. Yeah. Kids these days don't know how good they have it.
No, I know. Well, I remember, because I remember back in the noughties, when I was doing my, because to get the commercial pilot's license, which I was going for, you have to do a 350-mile round robin. You have to land at 3 different airports. So I was flying down to La Rochelle in the south of France, but flipping heck, we come across a squall. I was with my fiance at the time, just outside Paris, and this storm started lightning, just missing the wings. Right. and I just had to call into Paris on the approach and say, back to meet, will you? And I'm a VFR, visual flight rules, and just give me some help, and I'll take your guidance, and if I can fly that, I will. And they were really helpful, because I thought, wow, because my fiance is looking at me thinking, do you know what you're doing? And I'm saying, of course I do, love.
Of course I do.
And inside my head, I'm thinking, wow, we've got to think quick. And then we go again, improvise, adapt, overcome.
Yeah.
Because I knew the mission, I knew what we had to do. I just flew the plane, didn't communicate, wasn't bothered about communicating until I needed to, because it's fly the plane first, isn't it?
Yes, yes. Navigate, aviate, navigate, communicate. So exactly, right. Fly the airplane. Yeah, yep, exactly right.
And isn't it interesting that comes in automatically, just linking to your military training, linking to everything that you do. So you're in the police, you're doing various things, and coming home at night knowing that you've done something good for people and probably changed lives, whether you've saved a life or you've brought a loved one back home to someone. And I'm sure you had your interesting moments where you were thinking, wow, what's going on here?
It just came up on my Facebook memories just 2 days ago. 15 years ago, my buddy and I were partnered up. We turned the corner just in time to see a lady run up behind a guy and take a swing at his head with a hammer.
Oh.
And now fortunately he had taken a step, so she missed his head and hit him in the upper shoulder. but it was like a scene out of the movie. I came to a screeching halt because I was driving. My buddy dove out the door to tackle her, and it was a lot of drama in a split second. And I made a comment on my Facebook, 15 years ago, things can happen in a blink of an eye. You turn the corner and you can be right in the middle of it, just like that. And you need to be able to adapt, improvise, and overcome. You can't have a vapor lock. You need to be able to react and respond. And so that was one exciting moment that comes to mind, only because I was reminded of it on my Facebook memory just a day or so ago.
And I guess there were lots of moments in time where you just had to react straight away and be on it. So you come into 2015. What is it about your career with the police that makes you want to change? Because you did start to change in 2004.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was. And actually, if I may, I would love to share a personal story that I think would be encouraging and inspirational even to police officers in the UK. I want to encourage everyone, because especially who wears a badge, all the men and women out there, God bless you. This is an honorable profession. And I want to let you know that you do make a difference. And it may not sound like it, and it may not feel like it in the moment, but I want you to know you make a difference. And I want to share a quick personal story. I had come upon a domestic assault in progress. This guy was holding a pregnant girl by the hair, and he was beating on her. I get out of the car. I had called for backup. We arrest him with no problems. And even though I had stopped him from in the process of beating her and in the middle of the street, and it's summer, so I know it was in the evening, but the sun was still up. She is immediately angry at me, and she's calling me names and she's screaming at me. And I still remember to this day, one of her friends came up and was gently talking to her and reassuring her, hey, he's going to be out of jail in 24 hours. These damn police don't mind their own business. And I remember her gently moving hair out of her face as she's encouraging her to just ignore the police. They hate the police, and your boyfriend, your baby daddy is going to be home soon in 24 hours. And I called her over to me, and I said, your friend's correct. He will be out in about 24 hours, and you can go back to whatever life you have. I personally feel you deserve to be treated better than being beaten down like a dog in the middle of the street in front of everyone. And I know that tonight you are going to be able to sleep peacefully. You and your baby are going to be able to sleep peacefully because that guy is going to be in jail. And I just did an about face and I walked away. About a year goes by and I get a subpoena, go to court. Somebody is facing serious assault charges. He's going to do prison time now. And as I'm walking to the court, all of a sudden, this very attractive young lady comes up and jumps in my arms. And I'm, oh, wow, hello. And then she introduces me to another attractive lady who she says is her mother. And then she's showing me baby pictures. And she's thanking me. Her mother's thanking me, and they're crying. And it turned out to be her. She had gone from hating on me and just being very vile towards me, even though I just saved her from a butt kicking. And she told me, John, it happened. She goes, in the quiet of my apartment with him gone, you're right. I suddenly realized I deserve to be treated better than this. And it took a little while for her to finally get away from him, because if you're aware with the domestic violence psychology, it can be very challenging for the woman or man to make a good final breakaway. But she was able to do it. And she said, in large part because of the seed I planted in her head, me saying to her, I think you deserve better. And so that's why I encourage police officers, and for anyone in the UK who are police officers and you may have a bad day or a bad night, I want you to know you do make a difference. It may not sound like it or feel like it. You trying to help someone and they're yelling at you and they're cussing at you. A lot of times they're doing it just because of the audience they have. They're free. Okay. So just know that you make a difference and just drive on, look out for each other and be safe. So I just wanted to share that.
Well, thank you. And that's great, because actually what you say is bang on there. A lot of the time, just the same as I say that there's, when I said there's a lot more good people in the world than there are bad. Well,
yeah.
Occasionally, right, just like the military is a representation of society in general.
Of society,
Yeah. So you get, most are good, you do get a few bad apples. Well, same in the police, right?
Yeah,
And the fact is, just because you've got someone in the police, male or female, who's not a good apple, doesn't mean to say that all like that. I mean,
correct.
I've in my time, I haven't been, I haven't had any run-ins with the police. I've got a few friends who are police though, and they're human beings. Like, and if you treat them okay, even if you've committed an infringement, if you just say, "Yeah, mate, I got it wrong," yeah, well, then the police are going to be pretty much okay with you.
I tell people 99% of the time, people that I came in contact with who looked at me and said, "Okay, Officer John, you got me. It was my bad. I was either speeding or yes, I tried to steal that or whatever." People who acknowledge their contribution to what's going on in their life, I did more to try to give them a break because at least they were recognizing their part in it. But the people who want to be mouthy with me and call me names and da 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 da, I'm like, I'm less likely to try to give them a break. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, it is what it is.
You can throw the book at them. I mean, it's not rocket science, is it? I mean,
No, exactly right. You know, and I see this stuff on social media, people being very, very rude to the police officers. What in the world makes them think they can get away with it? Where did they learn that this behavior was acceptable? I think what happened here in the US, I don't know about the UK, but in the US, people have learned to do this because they know that the media will hold them up as model citizens. The media will hold them up as victims, and they will win a settlement. It's a win-win-win. So I don't know how it's going to get any better anytime soon. And that's why I tell police officers, hang in there. You do make a difference. Don't get discouraged. Don't get discouraged. Don't feel like you have to eat the end of your gun. You do make a difference.
Yeah. And during your time in the military and the police, and indeed when you were doing the security and being a pilot, what was the importance of having a good coach or mentor or both?
Having a good cultural mentor?
Coach or mentor.
It is always very, very critical that you have someone to bounce ideas, feelings, thoughts, and stuff off of. And so for me, I developed a very close relationship with my church. And so the connections and the people and the leaders that I have there are very important to me. One thing I also urge all police officers around the world, don't just hang out with police officers. Expand your horizons, make friends with your neighbors, make friends with get involved in the community, open up your horizons. Don't just hang out with one type of career field or people, and because that very soon, because I've seen it happen, can develop an us versus them mentality. Don't do that. You're setting yourself up for failure. And so it's very important for me, because of my experience in the military, I already knew the importance of being able to decompress. Whether it's through exercise, I used to run half marathons, or just talking it out. And I would tell all my friends and colleagues and police officers, talk about it with your wife, your friends, and so on. That doesn't mean you have to talk about all the gore and bad stuff. Just talk about it. Talk about the funny stuff. Hey, I saw John slip in the ice today. Just get it out of your system. And a lot of people think that by talking about it, it means they have to go into the gory details. That's not true. Just talking about it and being able to laugh about certain things is a great way to decompress. And so I always encourage people, talk with your wives, your girlfriends, your boss, get involved in the church or some other charity work. Get out of your own head and do for others. Do for others, serve the community.
And I remember that before I got out of the military, I'm not entirely sure whether it was by design or it just happened. But I remember being in the corporal's mess meeting, and the RSM asked for a volunteer DJ, disc jockey, and my friend threw my arm up, so I got it. But why that was so important for me is because I started DJing in pubs and nightclubs. So I get to
Wow.
learn, I get to talk to lots of civilians, and actually adopted that. And it gave me a break from outside of the military,
Yes.
which really set me up, because I carried on
Yes.
DJing when I left for many years. And I think it's important to have connection with the military. And I used to do hospital radio DJing. So I do that for a charity. And I loved it, because every Sunday morning I DJ, and it would be piped up to the children's ward, right?
Wow.
And then we'd go around with a roving mic speaking to the kids. And you know,
Nice.
some of the situations that the kids were in with their injuries
Oh, yeah.
was heartbreaking. For them to just get on the microphone and have a little chat, you know, there'd be
Yes.
1-year-olds and 7-year-olds and 10-year-olds, and it was just great, because we called it the Pajama Gang Show,
That's right. Nice. Nice.
and it was
That's
just great.
good.
So what you're saying about getting out in the community
Yeah.
and do something, and you know what? It did pay me something. It made me feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. You knew you were making a difference.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So, with regards to a tip, right? Because I love top tips, right? And you've already given a lot of value, and I just want you to think about, what top tip would you give to someone who's getting out of the military, getting out of police, or maybe they're out of the military and police, and they're in civvy street, and they could be doing really well, or they could be doing not so well, and they want to get a better result. What's the one tip you would give to them to help them fire on all cylinders?
There's so many, and they all come together. First of all, believe in yourself. Stay focused, and be patient. If you believe in yourself, it's going to help you deal with whatever life curveball, whatever so-called failures. You won't look at it as a failure. You'll look at it as in a bump in the road, and I just got to negotiate it and move on. If you're patient, you'll recognize that life is going to have some curveballs for you, and you just need to get past that. So what did I say? Believe in yourself. Oh, be focused. Stay focused, because the moment you let yourself get distracted, and I'm speaking from my own experience, the moment you let yourself get distracted, you can, if you're not careful, you can find yourself drawn down a rabbit hole where you end up maybe in a different job, or you never have an opportunity to get back to doing what you really wanted to do in the first place, which isn't necessarily bad, but that sets you up for maybe one day looking back going, coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking from experience. I'm doing very well now. I'm very happy, but I sometimes wonder why, when I first joined the military, why I did not do anything aviation related, and why I went infantry. And I think when I look back, why I did that was because I wanted to, the little boy in me wanted to play guns and do that for a little while, and then quote unquote get a real job. And so my game plan was to go infantry and then reclassify and get a new job. But if I had just gone into aviation in the first place, then I would, I have a love for flying. So I don't necessarily have regrets, but certainly I look back and think of things that I could have done differently. And so my word of encouragement, it's very difficult to try to pick one, because
and you touched
so
on you touched on patience, because you said
patience,
believe, focus, and patience.
Yeah, and again, the believe in yourself, that goes back to your mindset. You've got to believe in yourself that you have a skill worthy of creating a personal business out of, or whatever it is. You've got to believe in yourself. And then, of course, the other thing is having the discipline, and something that we should learn from the military, having that discipline to stay focused, to not get distracted. When you see yourself being drawn off to the left or right of the path, that you get yourself back on path. So there's a lot to it. I don't know if I could necessarily answer you with one answer.
That's okay. You were on a roll there, so there was no way I was going to interrupt. Yeah, because it is important to have the discipline to follow through as well. Because I did a webinar on procrastination, and I can
Yes.
see all the heads nodding,
Yes.
because I've started. I do a program which is the Pathfinder, which we chatted about,
Yeah.
and people have bought it, right, and they're not using it.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that's stupid. You don't want to shelf educate it. It's supposed to be self-education. You know, get into it.
Yeah.
So the procrastination was really important because it stops a lot of people, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And I will confess that we are all our own worst enemy. Some people, you know, more than others, but you've got to be able to get up, you know, like we said in the military, grab your gear and move out.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
got to be able to grab your gear and move out.
Yeah, you can't procrastinate with that order.
No,
Yeah.
no.
We're going. Yeah.
Yep, yep,
So,
yep. Yes,
and
indeed.
and what does the future hold for you now?
I love where I'm at.
Before
Yeah,
you answer that question,
yeah,
let me just frame that question. Right. So you're an instrument rated pilot, which is a pretty
yeah,
cool thing to be because it means you can
yeah,
fly in cloud and
yeah.
you're just working on your instruments and not looking around.
Yes.
You're a security officer with the Resurrection Life Church, and you might want to touch on that actually. But now you're the owner and founder of the Gentle Response De-escalation Training
Yes.
company. So how's that going, and how's that metaphor from what you did with the security officer with the church?
You know, in 2016, I was well on my way into another career after the police as a charter pilot. And because after all, that's all I ever wanted to do. But I was asked to do a de-escalation class for my church. I attend and I'm on staff at a very large church here in the West Michigan area. And as I was putting the class together, I was asked to do a de-escalation class. And as I was putting it together, I suddenly was struck with an overwhelming calling, if you will, a pull, an urge, a drive to just stop everything that I was doing in regards to being a charter pilot and to create a training program initially just for church staff and volunteers to more successfully, effectively de-escalate situations they encounter.
Right.
And by word of mouth alone, mate, and people finding me on LinkedIn, on the internet. My team and I travel around the country now. We work with law enforcement, state agencies, hospitals, schools, churches, wherever people have staff and volunteers that may encounter a client, customer, or a person who's having a bad day, loud, rude, obnoxious. I'm teaching them some very basic concept de-escalation concepts, tips, and techniques to more effectively handle that situation so that they don't inadvertently say or do something that could escalate it. For example, if you were complaining to me about something, you're loud, you're rude, you're frustrated, and I roll my eyes at you, you are going to blow up because I did something extraordinarily rude and disrespectful for you. You are not going to feel validated, affirmed. And that could, and it's those little things like that that I'm trying to teach people that they might be doing under stress. Roll your eyes, squaring off on someone, the tone of your voice. So that's it. It's going gangbusters. I'm doing very well. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. And even when, because I can always tell if I'm on speaking to someone on the call center and they say I understand, and I think you do not understand because you're not me.
Right.
And that's a term that can often, I mean, it's only because I appreciate where they're coming from that I think, right, okay, well, I'm not going to blow my top. The thing is, though, if you've got someone who's irate and you say, I understand, then that's not going to go down well, is it?
Yes, that it really depends on how you frame that. For example, if you're upset with me right now, just sticking with that example, you're upset with me. What I would say, what I would try to teach people to say is, Joe, I hear that you're really upset because this was not done to your standards. I understand what that must feel like because I remember when you know, if I quantify and qualify why I'm saying I understand, now you can relate to me. I'm someone who knows where you're coming from. I'm not just this representative of the business trying to appease you by saying, oh, I understand, Mr. O'Connor. No, Joe, I get it. I remember when this happened at when I ordered this. And so
Yeah,
it depends on how you use that phrase.
and I like the phrase, and I get that, and I think that's a lot softer. I think to bolster that, appreciate is a good word to use, because that
Yes.
necessarily
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily point on the fact that you have a total understanding of it. You can
No.
appreciate it, if that makes sense. So yeah,
I would rather you say I'm sorry. It's a very powerful
yeah,
word, but but you have to be careful how you say it. I'm sorry, Joe. But if I sound condescending like
yeah.
Jesus, Joe, I can't. But if you say something like, Joe, I'm really sorry you feel like that, because I can remember when I had this happen. Let me see if there's something I can do to help.
Yeah.
That sounds very different, right?
Yeah,
I'm trying to connect with you. Yeah.
yeah, and that's where empathy comes in, and knowing how to
Yeah.
deal with it, and
Yeah.
developing a rapport, because you're the same.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, you have to develop some type of connection, no matter how small, if you hope to de-escalate a situation. And I tell people, as a police officer, I often had I had a very small window to try to connect with this person who's very stressed out, agitated, and in crisis, and may not even like the police. So I
yeah,
had all that going against me. But I'm telling you from experience, it can be done. It can be done. You just have to make sure you do not become frustrated, impatient, or offended, because once you allow yourself to overly feel those emotions, you increase the likelihood that you're going to be the one to say or do something that escalates the situation.
yeah, and that's where the conflict starts,
Yeah.
or
Yep.
increases and gets worse.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
listen, coming back to that question now, because we've touched on how the work with the church came in. And by the way, yes, you probably would have made a good pilot. Well, you're a good pilot anyway. You would have made,
Thank you.
because if you're instrument rated, that's pretty tough.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so instrument rating, you were well on your way to being a commercial pilot. The fact
Yes.
is that sitting in the front of the plane and having a good flight, you're faceless. Now you're doing a lot more in the community, and you still get to fly, don't you?
Yes, that's correct. I still get to fly. And I've told people, and I'll tell you, and I share with the audience, if I was a charter pilot today, I would be very, very happy. But I know I would not have the same sense of accomplishment, the same sense of purpose, the same sense of satisfaction of when I go to these classes, my training seminars, and I get to engage with people and I answer questions and I see the light bulb go off in their heads. Or after the training seminar, when they come up and they thank me and they tell me how much I resonated with them and how they can now see how they've been doing things differently with their spouse or coworker or whatever.
Yeah.
And that there's no, you can't put a price on that. I feel very fulfilled. So
That's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. And then, okay, so we're rounding it up now. I've really enjoyed our chat today. And what does the future hold for you?
I expect it will continue to be very fruitful and very much a blessing to others, because I want to make sure that people are able to go home safe without inadvertently saying or doing things that could escalate a situation that they may encounter. And so I'm as busy as I want to be, because I'm my own boss and I'm the CEO and founder. And so when clients reach out to me, I get to decide how busy I am and when I want to work with them. Like right now, I'm booked out to the end of the year. And so anyone calling or reaching out to me now, I'm telling them the earliest I can talk to you or do any training with you will probably be March and April. And especially because I try to avoid doing things in the winter here in Michigan, because you can have some pretty decent ice and snow and stuff. So I don't want to deal with that. So the future, I think, is very, very bright for me with what I'm trying to do. I've written some books. They're on Amazon, and people are buying them. So
And what book are they?
Yeah.
What books are they?
Oh, I have a book specifically for law enforcement called Practical De-Escalation for Patrol. And then I have a book for church staff and volunteers called A Gentle Response, Conflict De-Escalation with a Ministry Mindset. And it's on Amazon, ebook and paperback. Yeah. So.
Oh, that's great. And Not that you particularly want it at the minute,
Yeah.
not until next year anyway. And I suppose that's where once you have, like we have, reached the point where we want to help as many people as possible, and we've got a time commodity that is restricted, then how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can find me on my webpage, but I'm now lately steering everyone towards my YouTube page, Gentle Response to De-escalation Training. And the reason I do that is because what I've been doing over the last 4 or 5 years is I take a situation that I see in the news or social media, and I talk about how it would have played out differently if someone knew something about conflict
Right,
de-escalation,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
So I talk about incidences involving police, churches, hospitals, fast food restaurants, road rage. I just highlight these certain situations so that I plant the seed in everyone watching it. Hey, if you're not careful, this could be you losing self-control and saying and doing things that could escalate a situation. So I steer everyone towards my YouTube page, Gentle Response, De-escalation Training. Otherwise, you can also, again, my webpage, Gentle Response. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So yeah.
you're getting around a bit, and actually that's just triggered something as a closing statement for me. You know, when you de-escalate a situation and you're actually thinking, how can I benefit the other person? Some people, maybe narcissistic people, could see that as a weakness, and actually it's not. It's a tremendous
No.
strength, isn't it, to be able to do that?
It is, and actually, I tell people there are certain personalities that will struggle with successful, effective de-escalation. People who feel like they have to win, feel like they have to make the last point, feel like they have to make their comment. They're going to struggle with effective de-escalation because they won't know when to shut up. One
Yeah.
of the most effective tools to de-escalate a situation is let the other person vent. Let them burn off all this energy. They may be loud, they may be rude, they may be obnoxious. Don't take it personally. Just let them vent. Make eye contact, nod your head, maybe repeat some of the words that they're saying so that you show you're engaged in the moment. Because how many times have we been talking to someone, they're not even looking at us? We feel disrespected. And if you're already upset, that's going to upset you even more. So don't take things personally. Let them vent. And try to fight the urge to feel like you have to talk over them or make a point or have the last word. But narcissistic personalities, I don't know if they can even successfully de-escalate a situation, because their idea of successful de-escalation is for me to browbeat you into submission, and that's not really de-escalation.
No, it's oppression. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, see, yeah, exactly.
Well,
So
listen, John Reilly, a master of gentle response. Thank you for your service in the
thank
military.
you.
Thank you for your service with the police, and thank you for what you're doing with the church and helping people with the de-escalation techniques. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. My pleasure.
And right, if you've enjoyed the show, remember you can visit joeteams.com, JOETEAMS.com, where you can find out lots of resources that will really help you get better results in life, business, and generally all around. And until we meet again, have a brilliant day. Thank you. JoeTeams.com is a resource I have created to fulfill my mission to help 1 million veterans and business entrepreneurs like you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations they deserve. JoeTeams.com is jam-packed full of valuable resources specifically designed to help you on your journey to success. Visit JoeTeams.com now to find out how you can join and start your journey to success immediately. That's JoeTeams.com, JoeTeams, JoeTeams.com. And until we meet again, have a brilliant day.